Hey everybody, I'm Tri-Horned Rhino, and welcome to the channel. For those of you who don't know, I am actually a zookeeper in real life, as well as doing lots of wildlife photography and visiting tons of different zoos and wildlife institutions all across the United States. I have been a huge fan of Planet Zoo 1, and I am super excited to see the progress on Planet Zoo 2. It's something I've been wanting to make a video on for a while now, and I figured there's no better way to kind of start than with the reveal of one of the most highly requested reworks of any of the animals from the original game, and that being the African lion, or I guess in this case, just the lion. First of all, the new models on those animals look gorgeous. The saltwater crocodile, the lion has gotten a huge upgrade. And it's just been really incredible to see the work that they've put in to dive into the realism side of this game. I think from the first game, they realized that's the kind of what the community was drawn to, and all the new features that we're going to be getting alongside the new realism and animal behavior, as well as overall graphical fidelity, how much better everything is going to look, not just the animals, the rocks, the plants. The guests are going to, kind of stay in that usual Planet Series style. Overall, though, this seems like just a huge upgrade, and getting both aviaries and aquatics is, I can't even express how excited I am. The biggest feature I think that snuck up on all of us is the wildlife reserves. I think we know a little bits and pieces about what that's going to look like. It seems like we are going to be able to impact those environments. We know we're going to be able to release our animals into it and be able to do research that'll impact our zoos. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to see how that works out. I've worked in a lot of big accredited facilities, zoos that are accredited by the AZA, and they're pretty much required to do conservation work. And to see that aspect of zoo management brought to a game, I think is really important to kind of show people that, especially in these larger accredited zoos or even smaller accredited zoos, conservation is going to be at the forefront of a lot of the work that is done out there. Um, so yeah, after we've kind of talked about obviously why this game looks incredible, and there's just so many new features. One of the ones that I'm very excited for is going to be this pregnancy feature. They also pretty much outright state that animals will have different seasons that they breed in. In one of my prehistoric kingdom videos, I mentioned that it's one of my favorite features of that game because it's very true to real life zookeeping, timing out your animal pairings with the seasons to make sure they have the best chance of breeding. And so, and that on top of the fact that the lion, the female lion model looks pregnant while it's pregnant, really seems that they're diving in head first, I guess, pun intended, uh, to, you know, expressing so many of those behaviors with animation and not just when you click on an animal, oh, there's a button that says it's pregnant or it's upset with its habitat or it's happy with its habitat. And so, yeah, they really seem like they're putting in a lot of great work in order to make sure this is going to be the ultimate zoo and like almost wildlife game experience. On this video, though, we've had a lot of great animal reveals. I kind of wanted to touch on some potential species that I think might be joining the game. I think the wildlife reserve feature, especially, is going to have a big impact on the animals that we're going to be getting. And yeah, so I think without further ado, we're going to kind of shift over from this to the way that I've kind of been making my roster predictions. And I think in a future video, I'll do like my big full roster predictions, how many animals I think are going to be in the game, of all the different like types, whether that be exhibit, aquatic, habitat, terrestrial, and avian. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at what I'm diving into. Again, pun intended, to try to give me an idea of what could be our coming species. All right, so if you guys have never heard of this website, I know it's an app as well. It's called iNaturalist. It is incredible. People, are going to be out there in the world and finding animals, whether it's intentionally or otherwise. And what they can do is they can take an image of that animal, and they'll submit it to iNaturalist, along as as well as the location and what time of year it was, since some animals are migratory. And then iNaturalist compiles all that information, and you can pretty much look up any place on the planet And then iNaturalist will pull up any animal that was observed there, how commonly it's observed there. You can go through and see the individual reports. And so this is going to be a really handy tool, especially when we're talking about the wildlife reserve mechanic in the game, because in zoos you can have animals from all across the globe, right? You can have a reticulated giraffe, and they're going to be an animal native to kind of North Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And then in that same habitat, you could have a springbok, which is a species of antelope that is going to be found all the way in southern Africa. And at a zoo, you can kind of be like, oh, they're both African savanna animals. But then when it comes to real life and finding these animals in nature, you'd be really shocked with how much diversity of species there are, and then how specific their ranges can be. And so one of the big ones that really told me that this new system of wildlife reserves was going to impact the animal. Yeah. So initially, we didn't really have good information. I had zebra, elephant, and wildebeest, I think, were the first three animals that were kind of shown off for that. But then we got the Maasai giraffe in one of those videos. And then that was a telltale sign to me of where that wildlife reserve is going to be located. And so another great feature about iNaturalist is the map. And so if we go to Africa, anything under this big Saharan desert is sub-Saharan Africa. And outside of the big rainforests, the initial three animals, they're found in a lot of these different habitats. But Maasai giraffe are pretty much just located in this region of, I think they stretch a little bit into Uganda, but lots of Kenya, and specifically in areas like Masai Mara National Park. And they're also located in this greater range, this big yellow outline is known as the Great Rift Valley. And so in the latest video, that feature focus when they were talking about lions and then kind of shifted over to the zebras being released out to the wild, they mentioned the Great Rift Valley. And so because of iNaturalist, I can just look up the Rift Valley in Kenya, and it's going to give us all the species that are going to be living there. And we can already see what the thought process Planet Zoo might be having when choosing its animal roster. So things like the savanna elephant, the plain zebra, the lion, and actually so many more, because then we got the Maasai giraffe specifically instead of the reticulated, common hippopotamus, which we know is making its return, the common or blue wildebeest. Blue wildebeest is going to be one of the other common names for the common wildebeest. Is there anything else that we've seen confirmed yet? I don't think so. But like just from looking up at this selection, we could have a pretty good idea of what are some other species they're going to include. I think, cheetah and warthog and ostrich are a pretty foregone conclusion. I think instead of springbok, we'll probably be getting the Thompson's gazelle as our starter gazelle species. This is a species that is endemic to East Africa, and so they are going to fit in perfectly fine with our Maasai giraffe. I hope we see the return of the African buffalo. I think spotted hyenas are likely. It looks like we've got white rhinos. The African leopard was a free animal from the previous game. And, oh yeah, there we go, secretary bird. So you can already get an idea of, not only are we getting just African savanna animals in the base game, it looks like we may just be specifically focusing on this region of East Africa. And I think that's super cool. It will make getting certain animals in the games a little bit difficult. There are some animals that are very common in zoos. An example being like the reticulated giraffe is a very common zoo animal, but they kind of live in a more remote region of Africa, and there's not going to be quite as much diversity in megafauna and in birds as some of these more popular areas like the Great Rift Valley. But in iNaturalist, we can kind of filter it out. So if we go to mammals, you can see in the Great Rift Valley they could go with either species of African rhino, and they would both make sense. Personally, I'm really hoping for the black rhinoceros. That's going to be my favorite animal on the planet. I have worked with black rhino, and my logo, the tri-horned rhino, is based off of a couple of instances of where black rhinos get this awesome mutation where they have a third horn growing from the middle of their skull. But yeah, either species of rhino would be great. And yeah, you can see the reticulated giraffe and the northern giraffe, two of the total 4 giraffe species, are located in ranges of the Great Rift Valley, but they're going to be really far north. And so depending on how specific the range of that wildlife reserve is, if that makes sense, like the size of it and where they want to locate it will probably affect which animals it has. So for example, this area right here will probably have Maasai giraffe, and that's where I think they're going to be basing a lot of their species picks off of. whereas reticulated northern giraffes are going to be up here towards Ethiopia, and then I want to say reticulated giraffe are also kind of over here towards Somalia, and then northern giraffe are going to be kind of stretching into northern Uganda and then South Sudan. And so that's yeah, I guess a little bit on what are some of the animals I think we're going to be getting. You can see like just in this area, there's a really cool selection of different species. And then, of course, we can classify it for birds. I think we're all excited for more birds. I think the fish eagle would be great, although we've already got a couple eagles in the base game, so it might be interesting to see some other different types of bird. I'm really hoping that we get some of these smaller species. Starlings would be really cool, as well as lilac-breasted rollers. Just these bird species that are not going to be so colossal, right? Some of these smaller birds that you can have big flocks of would be really interesting. And of course, you can always check out the different, if it decides to load in, you can check out the different amphibians and reptiles. That being said, we do have two other wildlife reserves that I think one is confirmed and another one I think is highly likely based off what we've seen from the Zoopedia. And so if we go over here, I do think, you know, we've got, or I guess it's been confirmed that we're going to be getting a Scottish Highland area. Looking at the species revealed, I think it might be based off the Isle of Mull in Scotland. You can already see the white-tailed eagle, the red deer. If I go over, not to reptiles, but to mammals, you can see some of these other species. This site did not have Eurasian beaver specifically, but again, it could be a little bit more general. And then with this, we can kind of get an idea of what are some of the animals that might be included. I think gray seal might be likely, especially with the focus on some more marine species, and they would make sense living on the coastline of that kind of habitat. We did have fallow deer in the previous game, so that could be another one that is included, as well as, oh, where did it go? I think there was another one over in birds. Oh yeah, herons. I think that would be a really fantastic bird to include in the game. But yeah, no, just it's a great tool that you guys can use. One, to just learn about where animals live in the real world. When I'm going to do wildlife photography in real life, I'll always check iNaturalist for the location that I'm going to be traveling to kind of give me an idea of what range of animals I could possibly see. And then I'll kind of pick a couple and that'll be my focus. And so I did say there were three. So these are the two we have confirmed. We have a Scottish Highland area as well as the Rift Valley in Kenya. But with the reveal of the European bison in the Zoopedia, as well as the Eurasian brown bear, the gray wolf, I think it's highly likely that we get a wildlife reserve kind of in this Western Europe region. I'm thinking somewhere in Poland, maybe based out of Germany, but somewhere in this general range of the world. And all the animals that come with that. You can see from the previous game, things like Eurasian lynx would make sense to bring back. The moose would fit into a ton of different wildlife reserves. They have a huge range all across the northern hemisphere. Red fox. Oh, here we go, Eurasian beaver. Wild boar was in the previous game. You can use red deer again. And so, yeah, I think the more we see some of these animals revealed in the Zoopedia, the more it makes me think about, like, oh, what could be the wildlife reserve that really fits all of these. And I would imagine fish are the one animal that aren't super well represented in iNaturalist unless people are going to be diving. But I would imagine that brown trout is also going to be something that can live in that habitat. I know their range overlaps with that. I think, yeah, iNaturalist, not that many people are going to be posting their fishing catches to this website. So if you do catch fish and would like to contribute to science, you could always post your own fish catching species or species you caught while fishing in order to help kind of bump that up. But yeah, I think that's why we're seeing so many of these large ranging European species, because I think we are going to be getting not only the Scottish Highlands, but some sort of wildlife reserve in Central Europe. I'm really curious to see how many wildlife reserves they end up adding. And yeah, so that's kind of all I wanted to touch on. With all that being said, I'm super curious on what you guys are excited for, what wildlife reserves you think are going to be added to the game. Personally, I'm hoping for some really cool aquatic ones. I think it'd be awesome to see all these aquatic species just swimming out in these wide open spaces. Rainforest habitats are another one I cannot wait to see in a wildlife reserve setting. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and taking a look at some of the ways that you could maybe piece together your own theories for the full roster of this game. Again, I think soon, maybe in the next week or so, I'm going to put together a full roster video. about all the animals I'm hoping to see and I expect to see in Planet Zoo 2. So, with all that being said, I hope you all have a wonderfully wild day, and thanks for dropping by. Cannot wait to get into this game.